The rain had stopped just minutes before the black luxury car rolled through the iron gates of the Harrington estate, leaving the marble driveway shining like a mirror, and inside the car, 12-year-old Ethan Harrington sat silently with his hands folded, his eyes far older than his age, while beside him his father, Alexander Harrington, the man newspapers called a cold-blooded genius, a self-made billionaire who never lost, stared straight ahead with a jaw carved from grief rather than stone. Because no amount of money could bring back the woman they had buried 2 years ago, the wife and mother who had been the soul of that massive house. Since her death, the mansion had become a museum of echoes, servants walking softly, rooms untouched, laughter forbidden by memory, and although Alexander had provided Ethan with everything money could buy, elite schools, private tutors, expensive toys, the boy had grown quieter, more distant, as if something essential had been taken from him, and that was when Alexander, driven by logic rather than emotion, decided that the solution to a broken home was structure, a new mother, someone who could restore balance, elegance, and order. But being the man he was, he didn't believe in romance, only in selection, and so he arranged what felt less like a family decision and more like a corporate evaluation, inviting 5 wealthy, powerful women, each successful, refined, and socially admired, to the estate for a final dinner, women who had expressed interest in marrying him, women who fit perfectly into his world of status and influence. What Alexander didn't expect was that he would hand the final decision to his son, believing it would empower the boy, unaware that children see what adults are trained to ignore. The evening arrived under a sky painted gold by sunset, crystal glasses chimed, violins played softly, and the 5 women stood like a lineup of perfection in designer gowns, each carrying herself with practiced grace, each offering polite smiles to Ethan while secretly calculating her future as the next Mrs. Harrington. There was Victoria, a real estate magnate with eyes as sharp as her heels, Helena, a tech investor whose conversations revolved around numbers and influence, Claire, a socialite born into wealth who knew every rule of high society, Sophia, a glamorous fashion tycoon whose charm dazzled rooms, and Margaret, a philanthropist whose kindness felt rehearsed, all of them impressive, all of them powerful, and all of them watched closely by Alexander as if assessing balance sheets. Yet while the women spoke of schools, travel, legacy, and appearances, Ethan's attention drifted elsewhere, toward the edge of the garden where a young maid stood silently, holding a tray, wearing a simple blue uniform with a white apron, her hair tied neatly back, her eyes lowered not out of fear but respect. Her name was Lily, and she had joined the household just 6 months earlier, a poor girl from a forgotten town who had come seeking honest work after caring for her sick mother until the end, and in that short time she had done something none of the others had even attempted. She had noticed Ethan. She noticed when he skipped meals, when he sat alone on the stairs at night, when he flinched at raised voices, and without forcing herself into his world, she had gently become part of it, leaving warm soup outside his room, listening when he spoke about his mother, never interrupting, never advising unless asked, and sometimes just sitting nearby in silence, which, to a grieving child, was more valuable than words. Ethan remembered the night he had woken from a nightmare, shaking and sweating, when everyone else slept, and it was Lily who had come running, not calling security, not panicking, but kneeling beside him and whispering, "You're safe, I'm here," and in that moment, something in Ethan had healed just a little. Now, as his father raised his glass and announced calmly that Ethan would choose the woman who would become his new mother, the air froze, the 5 women straightened, and Ethan felt the weight of every adult eye press down on him. Yet instead of fear, he felt clarity. One by one, the women tried to charm him, promising trips, gifts, influence, but their words felt empty, like beautifully wrapped boxes with nothing inside. And then Ethan did something no one expected, something that made the violin stop and forks pause midair. He stepped forward, lifted his small hand, and pointed, not toward silk gowns or diamonds, but toward the maid by the garden wall. Gasps rippled through the guests as Lily froze, her face draining of color, thinking she had done something wrong, while Alexander frowned, convinced this was a joke or a misunderstanding. But Ethan's voice, though young, was steady as he said, "I choose her," and when asked why, he turned to his father and spoke words that struck deeper than any business loss Alexander had ever faced. "Because she loves me when no one is watching." Silence followed, heavy and unforgiving, the wealthy women exchanging looks of disbelief and insult, some offended, others humiliated, and Alexander felt anger rise first, then confusion, and finally something unfamiliar, doubt. He dismissed the guests politely but firmly, the night ending not in celebration but tension, and later, in his study, he confronted his son, demanding an explanation, listing reasons, logic, consequences. But Ethan didn't argue. He simply asked, "Dad, when was the last time someone sat with you when you were sad without asking for anything?" And that question followed Alexander into the sleepless night, Over the next days, he watched Lily more closely, not as a maid but as a presence, noticing how the house felt warmer when she was near, how Ethan laughed softly now, how meals were filled with gentle conversation rather than silence, and slowly, painfully, Alexander realized that in his obsession with wealth and control, he had forgotten the most basic truth: family is not built on status, but on care. Weeks later, against the advice of lawyers and social circles, Alexander made a choice of his own, not to marry immediately, but to allow Lily to remain, to grow into the role naturally, to let trust replace transaction. And in time, the mansion changed, laughter returning to its halls, grief loosening its grip, and a billionaire learning humility from a poor maid and a brave little boy. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that real wealth is love, compassion, and courage, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because every story we share carries a lesson worth remembering, and your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life.